we're very working class.
Be honest.
I am being honest.
She was very embarrassed and nervous because clearly he's been watching, and I was mortified myself.
He totally flipped the scene on its head.
This interview changed everything. So it was kind of great he was there in a way, and it was a great moment for the movie, clearly, but it pissed me off. Hello, this is Fisher Stevens.
Hi, I'm Michael Harte. I'm the editor on Beckham.
And you're watching Variety's Making a Scene.
There was something there that just, straight away, I was just like, okay, this is it.
I was in a van in Brooklyn on my way to work as an actor on Succession, and my phone rang, and it was DiCaprio's office saying, David Beckham wants your number, his people. Are you interested in doing a documentary about him? I'm like, what? Out of the blue. I pretended, of course, I'm open at first, but no, I was not interested. David Beckham, I didn't know much about him. Jesse Armstrong, the creator of Succession, loves Man United. I said, Jesse, what do you think of David Beckham? He goes, he's a legend, he's brilliant. I was like, really? Yeah. I said, well, I got this weird call. He goes, you have to do it. And it wasn't until I met him and had dinner with him in London where it was like, okay. I mean, I met him, his ass was in the air. He was looking at a restaurant, he was looking for his wife's earring that had dropped. The wife was in the bathroom. And I was like, excuse me. And he almost like one of those bumped his heads. Look, sorry, I'm looking for the earring. And he says, that's just fine. And that's how I met him. I'm like, he's just a dude. He's just a normal guy.
The fact I went to the games really was just to kind of, some would say stalk him, I would say see him.
Story-wise, I made a big blunder at the beginning. And I thought, I'm going to do a story about working class England and get very much into the working man and football and the parallels. And I went and did all these interviews with these footballers that he started with who didn't make it, or who made it but not really big. And I went into their houses and I did a few interviews, and I went into these pitches like that you've never heard of in Cheltenham and Preston and these rough and tumble places. And the pivot really occurred the second or third interview with David. I realized anytime I went away from David, the story was just like bullshit. It just was like, what am I doing? And then David also, to be fair, as he says, to be fair, he started to really open up to me much more. And the interviews started getting much more intricate and deep. And then I was like, oh, fuck, I don't need any of that stuff. I just need him. I realized this is a love story about him and his wife, him and his dad, him and his ex-manager, Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex. And it was like, oh, that's what this is. Unfortunately, I had to cut some people out of the movie, the series, which I hate doing, but I got to see a lot of England.
That first time that I speak to her, I just fancied her.
I just fancied him, and it was as simple as that.
I knew who I wanted to edit this film.
I mean, the first time he called me, he just said, hey, it's Fisher. I didn't know who Fisher was.
And I cold called Michael Harte. I'd never met him.
He goes, hey, it's Fisher, and proceeded to talk about David Beckham. And I was like, Fisher? I was a Fisher. And then I recognized his voice, and then it all clicked.
And Michael was like, yeah, I'm making a movie about Michael J. Fox. I'm not available. And I was like, oh, no. I just had a feeling, though. And the truth was, he didn't have, like, faith in me making a Beckham film. Like, who is this freaking American?
So I said no.
So I started editing with other editors, great editors, but we were struggling a bit, to find the essence of the film. But I just had a feeling about this guy, and I stalked Michael Harte, because I just knew, no matter where we were, I wanted him to come in.
And then he came back a year later, and I still wasn't sure, even though I was free, because I had just done a celebrity biodoc, and Michael J. Fox was kind of all in on an authenticity, and I just wasn't sure if the Beckhams were going to go there. I didn't know. Fisher kind of cleverly said, well, let me send you a couple of clips. And I was like, all right. And so he sent me some of his backstory stuff, various things to do with his football career. And then the last clip, and I think he strategically sent it to me last, was the scene, the Be Honest scene.
Olive, do you want to come and be in it? Make me look like a nice person. I'll just pat you every now and then.
More than one dog.
She was quite nervous, the first interview. Getting her to sit down and, talk about her husband. She wasn't like so excited to tell me all this. But we found a day when David was out of the house away, and we were very excited that we could do it at the house where she's comfortable. So we're at their house. We had hair and makeup for her. No one else did in the whole movie, but she's Victoria, of course, fine. And she was very nice, very nice. And we start the interview, and yeah, I think she's a bit nervous, and I'm feeling like, God, she's really sweet and she's really open. And the next thing I know, I ask her this question about, how she was raised. And I know how she was raised. I mean, I did a lot of research with Billy Shepard, my story editor, producer.
We both come from families that work really hard. Both of our parents work really hard. We're very working class.
I remember specifically she said they were working class, and I thought to myself, oh, here we go again. I know this. I've seen a lot of films where that people say that line and then they go and tell their story. And all of a sudden, David pops his head into the scene, and I was like, what's this? What's happening here? And he totally flipped the scene on its head.
And then David opens the door and he goes, be honest, be honest.
Be honest.
And thank God Damian Drake, who's a cameraman I work with a lot, I don't use tripods, which is another thank God moment, because all my interviews are handheld, which is really tough on a cameraman because we shoot with these very heavy cameras. But he just knew to get up and swing the camera.
I am being honest.
What car did your dad drive you to school in?
I have an iPad that I'm communicating with Billy in the other room, checking questions, or where, she sometimes goes, ask about this. I'm going, what the fuck is David doing here? She was very embarrassed and nervous because he's been watching, and I was mortified myself. So you saw what we shot, and she's like, oh God.
So my dad
No, one answer.
My dad,
what car was it?
All right, it's not a simple answer
What
because
car did you get your dad to drive?
it depends.
And I said, what is he doing here? We had a deal. And he's like, I just wanted to make sure, she was really, and he's like, Victoria, you can be honest, really. Just tell Fisher whatever, be open.
Okay,
What
in the
car?
80s, my dad had a Rolls Royce.
Thank you.
I was like, okay, you got to go, man. And she went, David, you've got to go. And so he did leave. I made sure. I didn't start again until I heard the door close. Saw his beautiful car bail out, and then we continued. I'd done like 3 interviews with him by then, but I think he realized that we're gonna do this. Let's fucking do it. This isn't the typical Beckham interviews. This is like something different. This is deeper.
Ironically, I think it's one of the most honest scenes in the series because you get a true insight into their relationship and the way they interact, like they forget the camera's there.
And that just freed her. And then everything changed. Because then the next interview, that's when she was like, ready, go.
The biggest challenge with this scene was, where do we put it? What we had here was this incredible moment that wasn't driven by story. It was pure character. It wasn't revealing anything about the events of the past. It was just an insight into them as characters. And wherever we use it, it's going to slow it down. And can we afford to do that this day and age? It's horrible to say, but that was always the battle. It has to be in their introduction because it's actually weirdly, it's the audience's entry point into their relationship. And we all realize that if we play it right at the top, let's be brave that the story can just stop. And we meet our characters for, I think it's like a minute scene where nothing happens but character development.
Oh, thank you. Does anyone use this kitchen? It looks like it's never been used.
Of course. I was cooking here last night. Having
my voice in the documentary was my decision at the jump because I didn't know shit about this guy or his family or his wife. And I thought, I want the audience to understand that I'm like a lot of them.
Fisher was really funny, the way he would interact with them, that back and forth between him. And so I really kind of fell in love with that.
Look, he's straightening the chairs.
I know, well, that's...
David and I had a funny kind of good rapport, and I wanted to add a little humor to this thing. And I think through me being in it, David comes out funny sometimes, especially the verite stuff. Sometimes I didn't want to be in it, and Michael was like, no, go, we need you here. Wasn't popular with all my editors at the beginning, but Michael got it.
I was struck by how relaxed they were and how open they were to talk about kind of what they'd been through. And it more than anything, it felt like it was the first time they told a lot of it. And ultimately, they were just really funny. The way they told their story was refreshing, and I had a sense of what they were before I got the material. It was almost tongue-in-cheek. It just felt refreshing, and it felt like exactly what I wasn't expecting.
You're going to work?
I'm heading off to the fashion factory, kids.
No, where are you actually going?
Lakeshore.
There you go.
We have the interviews, we have the archival, we have the verite, which is a whole other thing because we don't have very much verite with David. But we have the beekeeping, and we have the making the coffee, and we have the closet, and then we have the iDirect. So those are the 4 languages that we're working with. And it's like, where do we speak French? Where do we speak Italian? Where do we use those different elements and how to tell our story? Almost like those are our tools. And Michael, we just found that language. You don't want to do too much. And my instinct is always, no, subtle. That was not easy, but eventually we found it.
I remember when I told my friends, they'd say, I think I know this story. I know how that's going to play out. And I'd worked in a lot of documentaries whereby nobody knew the story. So like Don't Fuck with Cats or Three Identical Strangers, where it's like this, how did I not know about this before? Whereas the Beckham story is the complete opposite. Everyone knows the story. But weirdly, that's your secret weapon because you can play with the audience's expectation.
I was in shock when it released. Shock. How, in this country especially, how people responded. Because it was #1 in America for like 6 weeks, which was like crazy. I mean, I'm sort of shocked I'm sitting here right now talking to you about it still a year, 9 months, 10 months later.